Hi, welcome all of you Knoxians out there in the audience. That's a term I've coined over the last few weeks or month or so. It seems like there's an awful lot of people who are interested in Henry Knox and the Knox Trail. And so we're delighted to have you here. I'm Rob Hoogs. I'm president of the Monterey Historical Society, and it's really my honor and pleasure to welcome this huge crowd. I wasn't sure how many people would be here tonight, so really delighted to have you. Before we get going with the rest of the program, I really want to thank Cynthia Maycook and the Friends of the Monterey Library for the refreshments tonight, and they're going to be providing refreshments tomorrow as well. So thank you, Cynthia. Just briefly, the planning for this event started about a year and a half ago. Leslie Hertzberg at the Berkshire County Historical Society at Arrowhead convened a group of people that are interested in history throughout Berkshire County, and we've been meeting every month or so for the last 15 or so months. So again, I'd like to thank Leslie for her leadership on this, and it's been great for not just the Knox 250, the Revelation 250 leading up to the Declaration of Independence on July 4th. Thank you, Leslie. We started talking about a subset of the Revolution 250, Knox 250, roughly about a year ago. And Mark Maycook, our esteemed library director and historian extraordinaire here, Mark and I were chatting one day. He says, the Monterey Library has a lot of material, memorabilia from the bicentennial, from 50 years ago when the Knox reenactors came through Monterey, marched all the way from Fort Ticonderoga all the way to Boston. It was remarkable. We'll see a little bit more about that tonight. So Mark said, gee, kind of like the old 1930s movies, let's put on a show. Let's have an exhibit. So I said, yeah, sure, why don't we do that? So we've had a lot of fun. We've learned a lot. A lot of what you see on the walls here, we've developed over the last year or so, and I've learned a lot. Hopefully, you will learn a lot, and I'm really impressed and amazed by the interest that people are showing by being here. So at this point, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Mark Maycook, who can tell you a little bit about his experiences leading up to this and to 50 years ago. So, Mark.
Thank you, Rob. So I'll just tell you a quick little story on how I got that idea. One day, a year and a half ago, I was sitting in the library doing admin, and somebody wanders in and says, I see the sign out there for the Knox Gallery. Yes, it's here. It's an art gallery. He says, he was a professor, and he had tours that he would lead, bus tours around the country for various things. And he said, I'm coming through next week. We're doing the Knox Trail from Ticonderoga by bus to Boston. And he said, this would be a good stopping place. I think he was looking at the bathrooms. And so I got to talking to him about it. I said, well, the gallery, was named after Knox, but there also is some, serious Knox. There are some serious Knox issues here in Monterey because we can't decide where he went. And so he told me when he was going to come. And the next thing I'm calling Rob and I'm calling Tom Ragusa and Bernie Drew. And those guys came here, and they had no idea what they were going to get, because I think they were looking for the bathroom. And here we had three of our great, scholars of Knox in Monterey, in the environment, in the surrounding towns, and they couldn't stop talking, the three of them. And the other guys couldn't stop listening. And I think probably after a long, boring bus ride, it was quite interesting to see that map and to be looking at all the twists and turns. So that was when I think I turned to Rob very shortly after and said, we have to do something that's, 250 years. I never thought back then when I was at the reenactment that I don't think I thought it would ever happen again. Anyhow, here we are 50 years later. And so I'll tell you a little bit about how I got involved in and what I know about the Knox Trail and what happened in Monterey. I, as a young child, spent a lot of time reading books. My mother said, you need to get a job. So she hauled me off to a dairy farm owned by Shell Fenn. And I went there, and my job interview consisted, we were shoveling sawdust or manure, I can't remember. He said to me, when was the war, it was a trick question, when was the War of 1812 fought? And I was like, this is a good job. Didn't pay, but we had a farmer who loved history. And we had a lot of talks over the years. He was one of my most dear friends. So he was honorary chairman, and as Rob has pointed out in some of the literature, and some of you have seen that bear coat in the back, he wore that bear coat to greet the reenactors when they came in. That bear coat actually goes back to his father in 1910 hauling marble from Lee to Ashentully. That is a working person's coat. It's not a fashion statement. That was a teamster. But Shell knew what it was like to drive a wagon and carry stuff, because when Shell was a farmer, he was still doing the horse thing with his father. So that leads into the debate in Monterey. Shell said to me, but Wallace Tryon says those guys did not go on 23. They went up Mount Hunger. That's a steep hill. You don't want to go with a horse and a cannon up, and then you got to come down and all of that. And so that kind of introduced me to the controversy. I had grown up seeing and walking by that stone that's a couple hundred feet up the road here all my life. And then I was like, maybe they didn't go here. And of course, here we are 50 years later, no closer to the truth.
Well, maybe a little.
Anyhow, so it's been fun, and I want to thank Rob. Really put this together. I mean, he really did a lot of work, so I want to thank him. And it's been fun, and we're going to have a lot of fun over the next day. So I guess Heather.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Heather Kowalski, the director of the Bidwell House Museum, and I want to reiterate what Mark said. I feel like we need to give Rob another round of applause. He has worked so hard. He has done every panel. So kudos, Rob. This is all really amazing. So I won't talk too long. So one of the things I did want to mention was the fact that so the Bidwell House, I don't know if any of you have been there, you know where it is, up on a hill. It was built around 1760, which means that when Knox passed through in 1776, the Bidwell House was there. Now, we don't have any documentation as to what the Bidwell family, if they ran into the Knox train. We don't know what they really thought about the Revolution. They didn't really keep those kind of records. We don't have good letters about it. But it has made me wonder over the last year while we've been doing this research, did the family talk about Knox at dinner? Did somebody in the family or someone from the household come down and see the train when it came through? We just don't know. But the fact is, you go up to that house from 1760, it was standing there when Knox passed through, and it's just a really vivid way to connect all of us, along with so many other houses from the 18th century in Monterey to that time period, and really imagine what it was like for Knox to go through here at this time of year. So I just wanted to make sure everybody kind of thought about that, think about the connections between the town and Knox traveling through here. So I know Rob has a few things that we definitely want to talk about as well related to the museum. So one of the things you're going to see tonight are some images from our Revolutionary War weekend in October. We've done this three times now. Every other year we've been doing this. We have about 100 Revolutionary War reenactors. They camp out on the property for the weekend, usually Friday night to Sunday, and they live as if it's the 1770s. And it is incredibly immersive. Driving up to the museum, smelling cooking fires, hearing muskets, seeing people in the costumes, like you really, really get transported back. And so you're going to see a few images from that. We have one in October. It's really fantastic. Are you showing me the cannon images?
Yeah.
Okay, we have some amazing cannons there. You may have heard them if you live in Monterey because they were really, really loud. So you'll see a little bit of that. And then the other thing you're going to see a little bit preview of is a documentary by Jonathan Barkin. So Steve, where's Steve Gilbert? Are you in here? Oh, there's Steve. So about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Steve introduced us to a man named Jonathan Barkin, who in 1976 followed the reenactment all the way through from Egremont through to Blandford and onto Boston to document the reenactment of the Knox Trail. And he did this absolutely amazing slideshow. And now he's been working on it. We worked with Housatonic Heritage, so thank you to Housatonic Heritage, got a grant to help cover some of the costs of him updating the slideshow, updating the images, updating the sound. But it is really, really wonderful. It's very evocative of something you would see in 1976. Anyone who's ever watched a slideshow, keep your ears open for the sound of slides. Like you've all been in that room, you know what it sounds like. So it's this really wonderful documentary. It's a record of what people were celebrating in 1976, and it's so applicable now. So we'll show you a little bit of that. But again, I'm so happy that everyone's here. This is such a great turnout, and I'm going to turn it over to Ron. So thanks.
Thank you, Heather. This really has been a collaborative effort of the Bidwell House, the Monterey Library, and the Monterey Historical Society, and it couldn't have been done without everybody's participation. So one of the questions that people ask is, which way did he go? Where did Henry Knox go? And quite a few times people say, well, I found a cannonball along the Knox Trail, so he must have gone there. This cannonball was found across the street, literally across the street, at the corner house, dug up in a garden. And thanks to Tammy and Mickey Jervis for lending this for display. The problem is Henry Knox didn't carry any cannonballs with him. So that wasn't Henry Knox's cannonball, but it's a cannonball. It's about 10 or 12 pounds. It's pretty impressive. One of the questions that is fun to speculate about is, again, which way did he go? And we know there were some main roads. We know Route 23, which is kind of commonly known as the Knox Trail. But as Mark said, there are other routes, and actually the route that was the main road when Tyringham, Monterey Township number 1 was established was not this road. This road didn't exist when Township number 1 was established. What existed was Hupai Road, Barrytown Mountain Road, and Brett Road. And then where Brett Road intersects with Route 23, it actually went down the hill by Stevens Lake and then came out on Route 23, pretty much where it presently exists. That was the main road, and I'm not going to take time today. I'll describe this some more tomorrow. But there's various maps here that show that route, which is the yellow on that map. That road existed. That's very well possibly the route that Knox's Teamsters, and by the way, Teamsters was a term of art. The men that drove the teams of horses and oxen, it wasn't a union in those days. We think of it today as the Teamsters Union, but they were actual Teamsters. They drove the horses and wagons. The Teamsters that came through here were hired by Knox in Saratoga, and they were contracted to haul the cannons to Springfield. They got to Springfield, they went back to Saratoga, and then immediately they were hired to haul supplies to the army that was in Quebec the Continental Army that was trying to capture Quebec. Teamsters were then hired to go from Springfield to Framingham. So again, the story of Henry Knox, I think we probably all heard the basic outlines. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. It's an amazing story of this young 25-year-old bookseller from Boston who loved to read about military history and artillery and learned from book reading and went to General Washington and said, "There's cannons in Ticonderoga, I'll go get them." And General Washington said, "What do I have to lose? Go for it." And he succeeded. It's an amazing story. You'll hear a lot more about that a little bit tonight and a lot more tomorrow. So I'm not going to go into that too much. I've really enjoyed over the last few years immersing myself in this story, and it's amazing how much I've learned, but there's amazing how much there is yet to be learned. Tomorrow evening, we're going to have a panel discussion here in the library about this book that has just been written. It hasn't been printed yet. Hopefully in a few weeks that will be printed and will be available to those who want to get it. It tells, again, part of that story. And in particular, Tom Ragusa's epic journey tracing the Knox Trail through Otis and Sandusfield. But it talks about the bigger story as well. So you can learn more about that then. Some of the questions that I find interesting is we hear the story of this amazing journey and that he delivered these 58 cannons weighing 60 tons to General Washington, and they used those cannons and placed them above Boston and Boston Harbor, and the British were surprised, which is amazing in itself, that they were surprised. They didn't know that they were coming. And they said, we're in a vulnerable position, we got to leave. And they did. So 2 weeks after the cannons were put in place, March 17th, the British Army and Navy evacuate Boston. They agree not to burn down Boston if General Washington's troops don't fire them on them as on their way out. So it's a great story. It has obviously national consequences. The results of that are that the British Army that was encamped in New England, in Boston, now leaves, never to come back to Massachusetts. They go to Nova Scotia, then they end up going to New York. All of a sudden now the Atlantic colonies are realize this is not just the Massachusetts war. This is all the colonies. Is affecting their whole independence, and it really, I think, fortified the arguments for independence. And 3.5 months after evacuation date, what happened? The 4th of July, Declaration of Independence is signed. It took another 7 years to resolve the war. But would that have happened without Henry Knox's cannons? Maybe, but it probably wouldn't have happened at the same time. Who knows what would have happened? He went on to have an amazing career in the Army as the general in charge of artillery. He was with Washington all the way through the Revolutionary War. He was at the Battle of Trenton, where they crossed the Delaware and had surprised the Hessians in Trenton. He was in Philadelphia. He was at Yorktown at the end of the war. He went on to be the Secretary of War in General Washington's first civilian government, and just had an amazing career that started with this expedition. Henry Knox passed by through Monterey on January 10th, almost exactly 250 years ago today, a week ago. So, without further ado, I'm going to show you a few videos and slideshows that he will be showing. Jonathan Barkin will be here tomorrow, and we'll start his presentation at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. So he will show the documentary. He will show the documentary, and then he will talk about his experiences 50 years ago, as Heather mentioned, filming this documentary, the slideshow, 50 years ago, and his experiences. And then he will talk about updating that slideshow for today. I think most of us here grew up with the old carousel click-clack. A lot of people, younger people, probably won't understand what that means. But suffice it to say, when Jonathan, a little over a year ago, showed Heather, myself, Steve Gilbert, and Aaron at the Bidwell House, showed us a rough filming of an on-screen presentation of the slideshow, we were blown away. It was amazing. We were so excited, said, this has got to be, you've got to show this. He said, no, I can't show this. It's, the colors are off, and we can't just do a slideshow anymore. It has to be updated. It has to be made like Ken Burns. That's what we all have come to. And I'm going to show you this clip and let you judge for yourself.
In her arms. We shall cut no small figure going through the county with our cannon, mortars, etc. It makes me smile to think how I will look, like a tennis ball bowled down the steep. May he who holds the hearts of all flesh in his hands incline America to put their sole confidence in him. And may he give special directions to your guardian angel concerning you. And you, my only love, for the present, but you.
A few days later, Knox wrote in his journal,
January 5th. Ran down alongside the Mohawk River until we came to the falls, so famous in this part of the continent and known by the name of Cohoes. It is the most superb and affecting sight I ever saw. The falls look like one vast torrent of milk pouring from a stupendous height. I was told that in summertime a perpetual rainbow was to be seen here. After having gazed and wondered for a long time, I returned from admiring the stupendous works of nature, and not a little humbled by thoughts of my own insignificance.
Knox reached the Hudson River on the 7th of January, and the crossing began. Successful, until the last sled broke through the ice. The delay itself was less serious than the prospect of losing even one precious cannon. It was only with the help of the people of Albany that the artillery was saved. In gratitude, Henry Knox christened the cannon the Albany. With the river behind them, Knox and his men rapidly approached Massachusetts, and with the help of local Indians, he and his companions began the Berkshire climb. Pushing, pulling, dragging 119,000 pounds of artillery through Alford, Egremont, Great Barrington, and at last to Monterey. Knox wrote,
January 10th, reached number 1. After having climbed mountains from which we might almost have seen all the kingdoms of the earth.
But there was little time to contemplate the land's beauty. General Washington was waiting. And so Knox and his men moved on, over mountains, across valleys, fording icy streams, clearing roads through the greenwoods, in order to allow the bulky artillery through, dragging, tugging, cursing their way to Otis, and then on to Blandford.
January 11th. At Blandford, we overtook the 1st Division, who had tarried here until we came up, and refused going any further on account that there was no snow beyond 5 or 6 miles further, in which space there was the tremendous Glasgow or Westfield Mountain to go down. But after about 3 hours' persuasion, I hiring 2 teams of oxen, they agreed to go.
So I'm going to stop there. The entire media show is about 21 minutes long, and it's an amazing show. And as I say, Jonathan Barker will be here tomorrow at 11 to present the whole show and then talk about the filming. Just a couple of things that you may be wondering. First of all, there were a couple of paintings there, the sled breaking through the ice in Albany. Those paintings are here on both sides. You probably can't see them behind the projector. But those paintings were done in the bicentennial from 1976 by a local artist that lived in West Otis, Wallace Noel. They were commissioned by Great Barrington Savings Bank. And they printed a set of those, or many sets of those, and those were available for purchase for $25. There's somewhere on one of these panels, there's a description of that and shows the advertisement for those. And Mark Baycook has a set of those original prints from 1976. So again, there's another local connection. And then these videos, these pictures that Jonathan shot of the reenactors, this was actually shot in the winter of 1975, and it was shot at Jug End in Egremont. They hired reenactors, oxen, sleds, had replica cannons, and spent several days there in the winter of 1975 capturing these images that represent the teamsters on their journey through the Greenwoods. By the way, everybody knows the Greenwoods is basically through here from Monterey to Blandford is that expression that is used. So it's a wonderful, beautifully evocative program, and hope everybody will get a chance to see that tomorrow. Okay, at this point, I'm going to show some slides from the Bidwell House reenactors from October. There's no sound, no sound effects. It doesn't sound right now with all that beautiful music and narration. As Heather mentioned, we had over 100 reenactors that camped at the Bidwell House for that weekend, including Knox's regiment of artillery, who demonstrated the process of loading, firing, aiming a cannon, and it's quite an elaborate process. Here, the fellow is lighting the wick. They have to clear the barrel multiple times to get the old wadding and everything out, and then finally are able to fire. We also had a number of interpreters who portrayed Henry David Thoreau, Martha Washington, Mercy Otis Warren, and Frederica Riedesel, who was the wife of a Hessian general who came through Marbury a year later than Knox. They came through in October of 1777. Were tactical demonstrations of the opposing sides of the Continental Army and the British Army, and more cannon firing. But a lot of it was just about life of people in the reenactment community. These photographs are by Steve Gilbert, our professional photographer in the back. The first section were ones that I shot. Reenactors start young. She was there 3 years ago when she was just like a six or 8 week old baby, that same girl. This is Emma Cross, who portrayed Frederica Riedesel. It was an amazing performance. These are slides that were taken in 1976, January 11th, 1976. The reenactors, the bicentennial reenactors came through Monterey. There's Joe Fenn in his bear coat. That's the grade, the field where Green Park is now, is where they camp. That's Henry Knox Trail on the left-hand side. There's the Captain Moore House and Tavern that Henry Knox made a stay on. It was about 16 degrees the morning they came through Monterey. So it was pretty accurate. See the icicles hanging off the beards of the oxen. Not sure if that's the cannonball. It's a cannonball. Okay. Let's see. So the reenactment 50 years ago was I think pretty remarkable, and we have some more video that members of the Maycook family shot then. On the monitor behind me here, we have some of these videos loaded. So if you come in some other day and want to see any of these or the video of the reenactors coming through Monterey. Those are on there. We also are in the process of getting a video that was shot a day later in Blandford that shows the same people. You'll recognize some of those same Teamsters coming through Blandford and climbing up the hill into Blandford. It's quite a nice video. So that will be available. Some of the things are still being uploaded. So that's an option. There's a lot here, a lot of panels that over the next day or so we'll be exploring some of those. So take a look. One final note before we wrap up. Any of you who are interested in taking the hike tomorrow, starting at the Bidwell House Museum and then going on a section of the old Knox Trail on Brett Road, if you could, I'd like to get a sign-up of people that are interested in that. I have a sign-up sheet here up in front, so if you could come up and give me your name and how many people are coming or that are intending to come, and also your email address. As you may know, the weather tomorrow, there's prediction for some snow in the middle of the day. We'll make that call tomorrow, probably around noontime, whether we're going to go ahead with it. I'd like to. It's more accurate if it is snowing and it's cold. I mean, part of the impetus for that part of the program was to give people an experience of actually being out in the winter, hiking on a snowy, crusty. So I'd love to go ahead with that. I'm more than happy to do it. My only caution is the snow and the ice underneath is a little bit unsafe. So if you're at all concerned about that, I'll be leading a hike again in the spring, so we can do it again in the spring. So don't feel this is your only one opportunity to do it. But if you are interested, if you could sign up so we can notify you if you're not here tomorrow, whether we're going to do it or not. I'm planning to do it, but we may decide. So the walk is we're going to start at the Bidwell House at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll have a little program there at the Bidwell House, and then carpool from the Bidwell House to the beginning of the trailhead at Brett Road. And we'll be finished by 4 o'clock. So you're going to be outside for 2 hours. You're going to need to wear warm clothing, good boots. I would highly advise traction devices, microspikes, trekking poles, whatever, if you're going to come, because it's uneven, especially with fresh snow on top. It's hard to see sometimes. So we want everybody to be safe and happy. So that's it for tonight. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll see you then.